Well, hello, and welcome to another Tea with the Druid. This is Tea with the Druid 301. And this is Philip Carr-Gomm, and this is brought to you by the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids. And this tea is recorded because while you're watching it, I am on a boat, hopefully, all being well, traveling back to England, and so I can't be doing it live. But I've taken the opportunity to record an interview with a wonderful author, Dr. Steve Taylor, who is waiting in the wings and who I'm going to talk to in a minute. But in the meanwhile, just for those of you who are new to Tea with the Druid, here's the format. We'll chat for a little bit, and then we'll have a meditation. And the idea is that every Monday we have this pool of tranquility and calm and inspiration too, and new ideas and things to think about. And so let's ask Steve to step in to the room right away. Steve, there you are.
Hi, Philip. Great to be with you.
Lovely to see you. And I'm going to zoom in on you so we can there we go, like that. So yeah, no, it's great to see you. And Steve, you're incredibly prolific. You've written 13 books, I believe, with great titles. I mean, the titles of the book I've jotted: The Calm Center, The Leap, Spiritual Science, The Clear Light, Extraordinary Awakenings. And one of the reasons why I wanted to talk with Steve is because he's both a psychologist and a mystic. I don't know, would you describe yourself as a mystic?
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is an area that we both share. And I met Steve for the first time in the flesh, as it were, at a British Psychology Society transpersonal section conference last year, but we'd met online before then. And Steve brings the light of science, if you like, and of psychological understanding to the world that those of us who are interested in mysticism and spirituality are also interested in. And I happen to think that overlap, or that approach is hugely helpful. Without the psychological understanding, one can get all sorts of distortions, I think, on the spiritual path. And without spirituality, I find psychology dry and missing a sort of vital element.
That's true.
Yeah. So Steve, you've just brought out a new book, and tell us about it. What's it called, and what's it about?
It's called The Adventure, and the subtitle is A Practical Guide to Spiritual Awakening. It's really a summary of everything I've learned over my years of investigating spiritual traditions and following spiritual paths and practices. But probably more importantly, my years of interviewing people who've undergone spiritual awakenings, my own experience of spiritual awakenings. So it's a kind of summary of everything I've learned and an attempt to apply it in a practical way.
Actually apply it. And that's what I love about the book, is it's really practical. And it's got a foreword that any author would die for. It's by Eckhart Tolle, and it's so clear and sort of lucid, and it just introduces the book. So it's fantastic.
And yeah, it's very kind of him to write it.
Yeah, absolutely. And he starts off by mentioning the fact that I'll just read you the first paragraph of his introduction, because it really says the only viable path ahead for humanity is that of awakening, or wakefulness, as Steve Taylor puts it. Fortunately, with each passing year, ever more people are finding access to that state, pure, unconditioned consciousness, and the expansive peace and heightened sense of aliveness that it gives rise to. And then he goes on to talk about your point, which is that what you've discovered is that it's much more widespread than we perhaps think, and that it's not an experience confined to hermits and monks and mystics, but to actually a large swathe of people, some of whom really don't expect to have these experiences. Can you say a little bit about that?
That's true. That really emerged from my research into I call it, there's a phenomenon that I call transformation through turmoil. And when I began to research spiritual awakening, a lot of people contacted me to say that they'd undergone a spiritual shift after following periods of trauma and turmoil in their lives, maybe a diagnosis of cancer, perhaps a bereavement, a long period of addiction or depression, or a long period of intense stress. And a lot of people didn't know anything about spirituality at the time. They just underwent this shift. A lot of them didn't have a background in religion, and they didn't really understand what had happened to them. They just knew that they felt different. They had this new sense of identity, with a new sense of appreciation for all of the small things in their lives, a new sense of connection to nature, and a new sense of meaning and purpose.
I know in your book you tell a story of how a friend of yours says that they'd found that the owner of a laundrette, they said, there's this guy who owns this laundrette and he's like a guru. You must go and see him. So you deliberately didn't put your clothes in the washing machine, but took them round to the laundrette, and you met this guy Tony with his long white hair, he'd been through some, heart attack.
That's right. He was, before that, he'd been a very successful businessman, living in a big house with lots of cars and lots of money in the bank. But he underwent a severe heart attack and almost died. And when he came around, he just knew that everything was different. He didn't really understand what happened, but he felt different about life. And he suddenly realized that money and possessions were not the answer to, fulfillment. And he began to realize that, there was he felt this new sense of connection to other people. He felt more empathic, more compassionate, and he felt this really strong need to help people. But most of all, he felt this amazing sense of gratitude for everything in his life and for his body. The main thing he felt grateful for was to have a functioning, healthy body. And he became like a kind of messianic laundrette owner. He'd speak to everybody who came into the laundrette, telling them about how valuable life was and how precious their bodies were, and how it was important to tell people that you love them and stuff like that. So he was a very inspiring guy.
Yeah. And so starting from this premise that it's more common than we perhaps think, and it also reaches people who because many of us who are listening, possibly everybody who's listening, is probably a person who's been striving towards spiritual awakening and who is engaged in various practices and so on. But you and obviously people get there under that in that way.
Yeah.
But you've also identified this other group of people who don't strive at all, but who have very difficult experiences.
Yeah, I think there are probably three different ways in which people can find spiritual awakening. The first way is when it's just natural to people. They're just born with a natural spirituality which never fades. I sometimes think that children have a lot of natural spiritual qualities, but they usually fade when we become adults, unfortunately. Yeah. But for some people, those qualities don't fade. They retain them. That's about a very small minority of people, and they often become poets or artists of some form. Sometimes they become social activists because of the intense compassion they feel for others. But the second way is sorry?
So I was just going to say, what you said reminded me about the children. There was a psychology textbook I read. I can't remember what it was. I'm sure it must have been around humanistic psychology or possibly transpersonal. But it just started off with a photograph of some joyful children, and then a photograph taken on the sort of London Underground of gloomy commuters. And then the caption was, "What happened?"
Yeah.
How come that wellspring of joy and connection?
It's sad. There's a story I tell in my book about an experience I had many years ago, probably 20 years ago. I was in the countryside, maybe in the Lake District or Yorkshire in the UK. And there was a small child staring at a cow. A cow was sort of leaning over the fence. And this small child was staring at this amazing beast, this monster with bulging eyes and a giant head. It was in a state of complete awe, staring at this cow. But the child's father was maybe 20 meters ahead. And I heard the child's father shout, "Come on, it's just a cow."
Yes.
I thought, oh no, that little remark tells you everything you need to know about, the way that parents decondition or condition their children out of that state of wonder.
Yeah.
That's quite sad.
But then what you've done, you go on from that in your book, you've identified a number of strategies or techniques that can really help people come to that state of being awakened, of wakefulness. And you combine and can you say a little bit about that? I think there are 8, aren't there?
That's right. When I look back at my research, and this also emerged from my studies of the world's spiritual traditions, there were certain qualities which kind of emerged again and again, which people demonstrated or described. And it turned out that there were 8 essential qualities of spiritual awakening, which people kept describing or experiencing. And I didn't realize at the time, but the number 8 is quite significant, isn't it? You got the Eightfold Path of Buddhism, the 8-Limb Path of Yoga, which didn't occur to me at the time.
And the Eightfold Wheel of the Year for Druids and
Yeah.
pagans, of course, the Eightfold Wheel of the Year. It's huge.
Yeah. And also music, you have the octave, which is 8 notes. So there are 8 qualities. They range from disidentification from the ego, gratitude, detachment, acceptance, harmony with the body, awareness of mortality, and a couple of others, which slip my mind at the moment. Presence.
Presence, absolutely. And they're the sorts of concepts. It's very easy to just put them in a word and say, oh yeah, present, okay. But actually, just something like presence, if you take presence as an example, actually developing it and practicing it and seeing its benefits are just massive, absolutely massive. And then from those, incidentally, by the way, IFS, internal family systems, which is a therapy that's very much sort of in vogue at the moment, and develops the ideas of subpersonalities that in a way psychosynthesis first began to work with. The chap who came up with IFS has 8 qualities of the integrated, self-actualized, illumined person, as it were, and they fit rather nicely on the Eightfold Wheel of the Year too. The sort of qualities, seasonal aspects to them, So then having identified those, you've offered in your book specific techniques for. Are you able to give an example?
These practices emerged from a series of workshops which I conducted a few years ago, and I developed the techniques. I practiced them over multiple workshops and sort of fine-tune them. So each quality has a number of meditations and exercises and contemplations which are designed to help cultivate those qualities. I could give you an example. Gratitude, for example. There's an exercise I use based on gratitude, which comes from my research into astronauts, funnily enough. I did some research into the transformational experiences of astronauts. There are only, I think there's only about 20 people who've been to the moon, but a large proportion of those 20 people had transformational experiences. They came back to Earth as different people and lived their lives in a different way. And a lot of that was due to gratitude, because when you gaze at the Earth from space and you see this tiny oasis surrounded by darkness and emptiness, you're suddenly filled with this amazing sense of gratitude for the Earth itself and for everything in your life, which is there. And all the activities, all the places, all the people that you love are there on this tiny sphere floating in space. So I do a guided visualization where I take people to the moon. We travel to the moon. We gaze at the moon from space. And we just allow ourselves to feel grateful for all of the places, the people, the activities that we love on this planet. And then we return to Earth and we retain that sense of gratitude. We work with that sense of gratitude. And there's a chapter on acceptance where I guide people through a number of exercises. I ask people to identify areas of their lives where they feel resistance, where they struggle to accept the reality of that aspect of their life. Maybe they feel dissatisfaction or discontentment. And then there's another visualization exercise where I ask people to, face that aspect of their lives and open themselves to it. And there's a couple of examples.
Yes. And, looking at acceptance, for instance, what I find so interesting and sort of hopeful, really, I mean, from the realm of psychology, is you have something, ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, which is, again, is quite sort of big at the moment. And it's this combination of CBT, cognitive behavioral techniques, which come out of the behavioral, almost you could say sort of materialistic psychology world, meeting mindfulness, and the two meet to create this this approach that uses acceptance as a sort of key fundamental sort of cornerstone of it.
Yeah.
And so I think these things are there's such potential, and I think what I appreciated in your book is the way that you're, for somebody who studied spiritual traditions, and um, you can see, that it's clear that they fit. You know that they're coming out of thousands of years really of human beings attempting to attain altered states and to improve themselves and their lives and other people, and to be giving and so on. And yet you've managed to convey these in a very clear, sort of lucid way, but that's also highly practical, because you start your book by saying, lots of spiritual teachers are really good at talking about transcendent states and altered states and spirituality and spiritual path and all that. But what we really need is very practical advice and instructions and all right. And then you go into it, and then the other thing you do, I think, which is so good, is that you avoid it all being left brain, intellectual, telling us what to do, why we should do it, and then running us through some exercise. You bring in poetry, which is Druids love poetry. There's the whole bardic tradition in Druidry, which works with the power of poetry, the way that poetry speaks about sort of heart and soul in a different way. And you bring that in, because you're also a poet.
I write a lot of poetry.
Yeah,
I think poetry is the sort of primary way in which I convey my own experiences, my own spiritual experiences. And what I love about it is that it's completely spontaneous. You can never decide to write a poem. You can just wait and hope and appreciate them when they come.
Yes, exactly. That's great. Well, maybe you could. What would be lovely is if you could lead us on a meditation, one of your meditations.
I'd love to.
And let's hear a poem as well, and that would be beautiful. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll lead a meditation, then I'll end with a poem.
Okay. And I've discovered now which button to press to get out of the way, if I can remember it. There we go. Okay. There.
This is what I call the ocean meditation. And in a way, this meditation represents for me, it represents the whole journey of spiritual awakening, which is a journey from discord to harmony, or from separation to oneness. So I'd like you to close your eyes for a few moments. First of all, let's bring our attention to our breath, just to settle down and to turn our attention inwardly. Just be aware of the sensation of the air as it brushes your nose as you breathe in, and again as you breathe out. And feel how with each breath you become more relaxed, as each breath becomes longer and deeper. Notice how your whole body responds to the process of breathing, as your stomach rises and falls. Now, let's bring our attention into our mental space. And I'd like you to create an image in your mind. I'd like you to picture the surface of the ocean. I'd like you to picture the waves swelling and foaming and rolling by. You can hear the roar of the waves as well. You can see the foam spraying into the air as the waves flow by on the surface of the ocean. But as you watch the waves flowing by, also be aware that beneath the waves, there is a place of stillness, a place of quietness and harmony beneath the waves that stretches way, way down to the bottom of the ocean. So just for a few more seconds, let's watch the waves swelling and foaming restlessly, and at the same time be aware of the stillness and quietness beneath the waves. I'd like you to make an association between the surface of the ocean and the surface of your mind. The surface of the mind can also be restless with waves of thought and associations and memories, thoughts about the future and the past, daydreams, restlessly passing by just like waves on the surface of the ocean. And I'd like you to also make an association between the depths of the ocean and the depths of your being beneath the surface of your mind, where there is also stillness and quietness and harmony. Now, let's allow the image of the ocean to fade from your mind. And bring your attention to the surface of your mind, where there may be some thoughts flowing by, some associations flowing by. But like a diver, let's allow ourselves to fall beneath the surface of our minds into our deep being, just like a diver who falls into the deep ocean beneath the waves. Let's allow ourselves to dive down from the surface of our minds, away from those restless thoughts, into the harmony of our deep being. Feel your attention, your awareness fall down away from your mind into your deep being, deeper into stillness and harmony. Deeper still into the depths of your peaceful inner being, feeling completely safe, completely whole. And in this deep place, we can sense our oneness. We can sense that it's the same inner being, the same consciousness, the same deep being which flows within us all, bringing us all into oneness, beyond the boundaries of our physical being. So let's feel that deep connection between us in this place of formless, identityless being. Let's, for a few moments longer, let's savor this feeling of stillness and connection, this sense of harmony and radiance that's all around us, above us, and beneath us, just like the deep ocean, stretching endlessly. Let's savor that feeling for a few seconds longer. And now let's allow ourselves to rise, just like a diver who moves slowly back to the surface of the ocean. Let's allow ourselves to rise through the deep harmony of our being, back towards the surface of our minds. And as we emerge back into the surface of our minds, we can sense that now the surface of our minds are still and calm. No longer like the surface of the ocean, but more like the surface of a lake, completely still and calm, so that we can feel stillness stretching all the way down from the surface of our minds, down into our deepest being. And let me end this meditation by reading a poem. This is a poem called The Wave, which also symbolizes the journey of spiritual awakening. The wave. The ocean sighed with pleasure as the wind caressed and stroked her, and soon the wave was born. The wave felt his oneness with the ocean. He felt her as his source, as part of his own being, and knew he could never exist apart from her. But soon the wave began to watch himself. He saw his own smooth and graceful motion and was mesmerized. He saw the beautiful bubbling foam that sprayed around him and was transfixed. The wave fell in love with himself. He started to believe that he was his own master, that it was his own strength that was propelling him. He believed he could direct his own flow and could change direction if he wanted. The wave forgot the ocean and saw himself as separate, a self-sufficient, sealess wave, who felt proud of his power, exhilarated by his autonomy as he rolled faster and rose higher. But then he looked around and saw the other waves, the ones who had already peaked and crashed and were beginning to dip and to disperse, and the other ones who were already dissolving and disappearing. The wave felt afraid, knowing that his own form was temporary, that his speed and power would ebb away, and soon he would dissolve and disappear as well. The wave resisted and rebelled. He tried to build up more momentum, to collect more water, to roll more smoothly, to foam more spectacularly, to make himself so powerful that he would never dissolve away, to make his form so perfect that he could escape decay. But soon he realized he had no choice. He had less control than he thought, less strength than he thought. He stopped grasping and pushing, and felt the relief of letting go, and the freedom of no longer trying. After his majestic foaming rush, and the glorious crescendo of his breaking, The wave gave himself up to his ebbing, fading flow, and to the ease of his descent. And he was filled with the joy of acceptance. The wave allowed his boundaries to soften. He felt his connection to every other wave and his oneness with the whole of the ocean. He felt the vast wholeness of the ocean within his own being, then as his own being. Then the wave dipped, slowed down, and began to dissipate. Quietly and serenely, without fear or resistance, he gave himself to the tide and became the ocean again, knowing that he had never been anything else.
Thank you so much, Steve.
You're welcome.
That was splendid and deep, and yes, and I will put on the show notes your books so that people can find you, and your website, and the book which has just come out is called, sorry, I've forgotten the name, the Adventure.
The Adventure.
The Adventure, yes. And I'm sorry this has been so short, but that's the nature of Tea with a Druid.
Oh, no worries.
No, but I think people have really got a sense of it, and that's wonderful. And thank you. Do come on again, and you stay there while I finish the recording, and then we can chat afterwards. But
great.
So thank you, Steve.
No, thank you, Philip. Thanks everybody for watching.
And yes, thank you to everybody for watching this, and I very much look forward to seeing you again in a week's time for another Tea with a Druid. And do type your comments in, because lots of people see them, and if you feel moved to comment, then please do. And you have a lovely week, and many blessings, and see you next week. Okay, bye.